All right, this is Luke 17. Let me read from 28. Likewise, it was in the days of Lot, they did eat. So this is interesting because it says the days of Lot, always in the days of Noah, but this is in Luke. Okay. The days of Lot, they did eat, they drank, they bought, they sold, they planted, they builded. But the same day that Lot went out of Sodom, it rained fire and brimstone from heaven and destroyed them all. Even thus shall it be in the day of the Son of Man is revealed. In that day he which shall be upon the housetop and the staff in the house, let him not come down to take it away. Let him that is in the field, let him likewise not return back. And here it is. Remember Lot's wife. Whosoever shall seek to save his life shall lose it. Whosoever shall lose his life shall preserve it. All right. But here, remember Lot's wife. So, what does that verse sound like to you? What do you hear when you hear, like, remember Lot's wife? When we think about Lot, all right, the first thing is just like how it just pops up out of all of the issues that are being discussed out of nowhere. Remember Lot's wife. In the days of Noah, and this was happening. But hey, remember Lot's wife. Out of nowhere, out of the blue, remember Lot's wife. So what are we supposed to think about when we think of Lot's wife? What are we supposed to remember when we remember Lot's wife? So it's an interesting, like, these are the commandments that are in the Bible, like be fruitful and multiply, pray without ceasing, always be joyful. These are the spoken commandments that are in the Bible, and people don't see them as commandments. But remember Lot's wife is spoken like a commandment. So when you read it, it's very easy to not pay attention to it because of the way it just pops out of nowhere and the way that it seems so flimsy. It seems so like it's just a very, very tiny verse, but it's there, it's spoken, and it means a lot. So we're just going to take a moment to remember Lot's wife, because there's a lot about Lot that's lost. But let's remember Lot's wife. So let's go into the Bible and see what it says about Lot's wife.
Here we hear about what happened to Lot's wife in green. It says, the inhabitants and which grew out of the ground, but his wife looked back from behind him, and she became a pillar of salt. And Abraham get up early in the morning to the place where he stood before the Lord. So, all right, let me switch to video for this. But I just want you to see something. But his wife looked back from behind him, and she became a pillar of salt.
Here, once again, the character of Lot's wife is just spoken of in passing, spoken of amidst other details, just lost in these details, but we're still supposed to remember Lot's wife. Another detail about Lot's wife is that we don't even know her name. We just know her as Lot's wife. So that's something about Lot's wife, that the characteristic of her is a characteristic that's not rememberable, but it's always mentioned. But we don't know the actual characteristics, which is very interesting. But this is why we're remembering Lot's wife. So, and this is Genesis 13:1. And Abram, so this is Abraham before he was Abraham, when he was still Abram. Abram went out of Egypt, and he and his wife and all that he had, and Lot with him, into the south. And Abram was very rich in cattle, in silver, in gold. All right. So here we also know that, and Lot also. So Lot also, which went with Abram, had flocks and herds and tents. So here we're saying that, and Lot also, which went with Abram, had flocks and herds and tents, and the land was not able to bear them, that they might dwell together, for their substance was great, so that they could not dwell together. So there was strife between the herdmen of Abraham's cattle and the herdmen of Lot's cattle. And the Canaanites and the Perizzites dwelled then in the land. And Abraham said unto Lot, Let there be no strife, I pray thee, between me and thee, and between my herdmen and my brethren, and my herdmen and thy herdmen, for we be brethren. Is not the whole land before thee? Separate themselves, I pray thee, from me, and thou wilt take the left hand, and I'll go to the right, or if you will depart to the right, I'll go to the left. It's up to you, man. What do you want? And Lot lifted up his eyes and beheld all the plain of Jordan, and it was well watered everywhere before the Lord destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah, even as the garden of the Lord, like the land of Egypt, as thou comes unto Zoar. Then Lot chose him all the plain of Jordan. That's a lot, okay? That's first of all, we first need to understand Lot, because we don't know Lot's wife. We know Lot, that's the name. So Lot chose him all the plain of Jordan because there was a lot. And Lot journeyed east with a lot of flocks, a lot of tents, because he had a lot. So Lot went with a lot to the land of a lot. And they separated themselves, the one from the other. Okay, so he went with a lot, and also Abraham went with a lot. So Abraham dwelt in the land of Canaan, and Lot dwelt in the cities of the plain and pitched his tent towards Sodom. All right, so and then we hear about the men of Sodom were wicked and sinners before the Lord, and exceedingly. All right.
Here I'm in the dictionary. Let's go with Lot. Okay. So just the meaning of this word is the root for a large quantity or number, a great deal, a separate portion. So this is interesting because they picked a separate portion of land. Okay. One or more items auctioned, a number of people taken collectively, a lot. So he also had people, because in those tents there were people. A plot of land. So this is interesting because this is the actual word. So this patch, which is talking about the Jordan area, this is the plot. So this is an actual story. So that land has a story. So when we talk about Sodom and Gomorrah, we actually hear about the plot of story that happened at that place, at that plot where Lot was. Okay. So there was also a secret plan by those angels, a secret plan by God. That's a plot to rescue Lot. Okay. So there was a plan and a purpose. This is the reason why we remember Lot's wife. Okay, but let's go back to the word Lot. So a chance, destiny, fortune, anything, a chance, fate, a prize. Now, here's another word, allot. So to allot is to distribute or apportion a lot. So this is exactly what they did. They distributed and allotted a plot because they had a lot. So we come back to the issue of remember Lot's wife. So we've been talking a lot about Lot because Lot had a lot. And there was a plot in the story of Lot when he went to the place where there was a lot, the plot of land. So we talk about him, but then when we consider the story of his wife, we know the wife based on the name of Lot. We call her Lot's wife. Remember, Lot's wife. So we talk about Lot first and then the wife. So Lot has a lot, and the wife turns into salt. So when we remember Lot's wife, what we're remembering is the little of a lot and the lot of a little. What we're remembering is the lesson that you are the salt of the world. What we're actually remembering is wisdom, in the sense that it's not about having a lot. Even the little that you have will save you, or even the little detail that she was told is what was supposed to save her. But it was not able to save her because of a little misdeed, because of a little mystery thing that happened. So we remember Lot's wife, that you're supposed to take instructions, just like how Moses was given the instruction to strike the rock and to instruct the rock, instead he struck the rock. So those little things are always very important. This is why we remember Lot's wife. But more specifically, she turns into salt. And when you add salt, you're not supposed to add a lot. So this is the story of Lot having a lot, his wife becoming nothing or a little. This is the story of a little becoming a lot, which is the story of humility. And this is the story of Melchizedek, which we know a little about, but he also has a lot, because even the little he got from Abraham, because when we hear about Lot, we know that Lot had a lot, but we also know that Abraham had a lot. And God also allotted Abraham a lot. So when Abraham is given the land, like when we read the chapter, we read Genesis 13, which was saying that they went south of Egypt. And there's a lot we can talk about there. But that's where Lot was, and that's where Lot's wife was, the south of Egypt. And there's a video that I made about that, because it should be obvious, but I had to emphasize the fact that the south of Egypt is definitely Africa, right? But so they went into the south of Egypt, according to the Bible, and a lot happened, and this is where they had a lot, and this is where they allotted a lot. So when they have that issue with Lot's wife turning into a pillar of salt, it is about the excessive nature, the euphoria that was being experienced in that place where there was already a lot. So it was a place of too muchness, which was the story of Lot, which was a lot. So it was a lot. And then like Lot went with a lot. So when he went there, that place got a lot. And it was so excessive that they were blind. Like they were like it's a whole different story about what happened at that plot. It's a lot. So so here okay. So I was saying that Melchizedek gets a lot because Abraham also had a lot. And then Lot also gives a lot to the plot of the place he went. But the issue was, or the instruction was, remember Lot's wife. Remember Lot's wife. So this is just a reminder to remember Lot's wife. And you don't need to remember a lot, It's about the little. But it's also about the little in the lot. Like,
when we think of Lot, we also think of little in a lot. We think of land, we think of the little plots, we think of the seeds and things like that. The reason why is because the parable of the sower is speaking about the plot with some fruit that was on the rocky ground, shallow ground, fertile ground, pathway. That's a whole plot. So that's a story. So a plot is also a story. So this is why I opened the dictionary, because there's a lot when we can talk about Lot. It's also about the lotto, because Lot thought he won the lotto because he got a lot. It's like, oh yeah, that place in Jordan, there's so much, like a lotto. So it's about excessiveness. So it's just like that whole mindfulness, that when we remember Lot's wife, we're remembering mindfulness, and we are like taming irrational exuberance. Yeah. So that tends to happen from time to time. And irrational exuberance, that's actually a financial term. Irrational exuberance is the definition of asset bubble inflation. Irrational exuberance is a term coined by Alan Greenspan. Irrational exuberance is what they experienced when they saw the angels as the plot thickens, in the secret plot. Irrational exuberance. And yeah, so there's so many, there's a lot, right, to use the proper word. There's a lot that is in that plot, is in that story plot itself, because that's why I'm still talking about it. I'm now talking about asset bubbles, because now we're talking about a place with a lot. So now we're talking about like how it's created, which is the mass hysteria that was existing in that place, in that, because of the plot. So now when we also talk about the plot of Lot, all right, yeah, I think we've said Lot a lot, yeah, but yeah, I think we have taken like a reasonable moment of time to remember Lot's wife. So I believe that since we're doing this together, we also partake and inherit in that blessing that comes through the kingdom, through wisdom. Because if we follow this wisely, if we follow the words of Jesus wisely, there are certain blessings that are entrusted in that. It's like an algorithm. It's like a computer code. Like it is spoken. It can't be unspoken. It can't be undone unless it is like uncoded and decoded. And that's why Jesus came, to decode everything. So when he says remember Lot's wife, it's because he wants us to remember Lot's wife. So if we're doing it, then we're partaking in the spirit of Jesus, which is the comforter. So I believe like we need the comfort more and more each day, because there's a lot happening, right? But we need the comforter, and that's the spirit that Jesus left. And when he left, he said that I'm going to give you the comforter. When he left, he also said you should remember Lot's wife. So if we're doing this, then I feel like that's the little in the lot. That's the little he said, and this is the little we can do. And the more we can follow those commandments, because this is what I'm just feeling more and more, that there's a commandment that's like, there's so many things that we can interact in terms of the Bible, that we'll all discover certain things that are new. Once iron sharpens iron, your face sharpens my face sharpens your face, in the sense of it applying wisdom and proverbs, as in to say, it says like pray ceaselessly. That's a commandment, right? In Thessalonians, or is it in Philippians? Yeah, but I know that it says pray ceaselessly. So once you start doing that, there's just like in obedience to that, or be diligent, in the sense of understanding that commandment. But here we're understanding the remembrance of Lot's wife. So we're also remembering something for ourselves. We're also remembering something little that was lost, but something that is going to become a lot, in the sense of it being the blessing of Melchizedek, the blessing of Abraham. Abraham gave a little, 10% to Melchizedek, which is a lot because it's still being recorded in the book of Hebrews. That's a lot, like a long time after. So remembering Lot's wife is remembering the 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 power we have in the little things that we can do. And the power of Lot's wife was her turning back, and that is how she became so little into salt. You know, people don't value salt that much, but it is extremely valuable. It was so valuable before, but now we are in a different age. Like what we now take for granted is so different. So at some point, salt was everything, but now it's nothing. That's how we remember Lot's wife. She was once the wife with Lot's wife. Lot had a lot, so much that the land, created by God, that natural resource could not support their natural substance. That's how much he had. So that's the reason they had to leave, because it was just a lot, too much. So when he went there, his wife was a big deal. Like this man, Lot, because in that place, that's what they cherish a lot. So they were like huge people. They were like respected people, because this is Sodom and Gomorrah, the most materialistic place on earth at that point, until it was burnt down. It was that bad. There was a lot of that irrational exuberance. Again, that's why I stated it a lot, because that was like, nah, like God's like, nah, we ain't gonna do that. Okay, I'm taking care of this. And that's what happened. So there's a lot more into that plot story. Yeah, so she was a lot. And then so that's how salt was once the greatest thing, the greatest commodity, salt and spices. And even right now, like I'm speaking in a phone, like data has now become like not as I remember growing up and having to only have a scratch card, like you buy for $1 and you only have 10 texts, and that was enough. I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna preserve these and use them. But now, like, I can text unlimitedly as long as I have Wi-Fi, so that's also exponential growth. So that's also called a plot. When you plot a graph, it's exponential. So this is also irrational exuberance. This is why I was saying there's a lot in that plot. But I have definitely shared most of what I've seen, because it's an interesting subject to remember Lot's wife. And if we can remember Lot's wife together, I know that we can know more together, share more together, because once we remember Lot's wife, then we're also remembering different things, small things about each other, through each other, for each other, by each other, things like that, because that's a little salt. That's how we become the salt of the earth. It's not about a lot of salt, it's about a little.